One thing I'm really interested in um, is like the proliferation of administrative staff and when that started. Like, why do you think that happened? So I've had some people suggest to me that universities suddenly became awash in money because of guaranteed student loans or whatever it was. Like, where did all these extra people come from, and uh, what's worth looking at if I was, going to try to look at the origins of
Yeah, I think George Bridges actually taught me the answer to this. And
that?
I'm trying to figure out whether, he and I had a very adversarial relationship, but it involved a certain number of private conversations in which there was more candor than you might imagine.
Hmm.
And, he was the worst offender in this regard. He massively increased the size of the administration of the college, and he boosted some people to positions of power who weren't qualified for it, didn't bring anything to the table that would make you want them in those positions. And it became clear that in some sense he was building a structure that was self-protected. You can imagine you take somebody who, I don't know, maybe they're earning, you know, $50,000 a year, and suddenly you get them a job where they're earning $150,000 a year, right? That's going to be a loyal person. When your malfeasance come to the surface, that's somebody who's going to stand by you,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I think the general rubric was, in George's case, he was solving a George problem. And the George problem was he was going to do some stuff that was going to put him in jeopardy. He needed people who could be sacrificed, and a large number of them, so that as people came for him, heads could roll and they wouldn't be his. And he needed to have more votes than he had. And the way you
Right.
get more votes is you get people who, will Clarence Thomas to your Antonin Scalia, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So um, I don't know how general it is, but I guess I would say, game theoretically, I think the basic answer is much of what goes wrong because individuals are serving a narrow individual purpose, and we look at the collective consequence of this and imagine that an institutional purpose is being solved.
Right.
All
Right.
right.
That's interesting. Hmm. Hmm.
So that's my best guess. The other thing is, actually, this is something. At some point, I had dinner. Heather and I did with Jordan Peterson, and he said that he had seen this phenomenon, which I'm sure you're going to be as familiar with as anybody, which is that you have an institution and it's constructed to solve a problem, but over time it evolves to continue to exist. That becomes its purpose.
Hmm.
And so lots of things that are designed to accomplish some goal subtly shift to actually not solving the problem, because that would be reason to go extinct.
Right.
And rather than do that, they come up with self-justifying explanations for the need to have them go on forever. And you can even hear this in this movement about how uh, you know this contradiction. White supremacy is a terrible, critical problem in the United States that requires us to address it immediately and in profound ways. It's also an incurable problem, so there's really no point in addressing it. We will be doing this forever,
Right.
right?
It's a lifetime commitment. Yep.
It's a permanent job. It's
Mm.
it's the goal we will never reach.
Right.
So anyway, I think this tendency for things that have gained power, gained access to resources, to come up with reasons that they need to continue doing what they're doing, has more to say about why these administrations become bloated. Now, why it suddenly took off, clearly there was some sort of a tipping point or phase transition that gave whatever it is that wants to create more administration the power to do so.
Hmm.
And it's a little harder to spot what that might be. Um, but somewhere in that neighborhood, the game theory is happening at the individual level, and the analysis is happening at the collective level, and so they don't meet.